I wander off amongst the empty glass cases and wonder why some people are actually looking in them. Maybe the sign says, "Coming attraction, the rest of the Parthenon." The lighting in the room was really low, maybe to go along with the IQ required for the job. Everybody whispered, but I'm sure they were talking the same usual shit. They smoked and used those 2-foot-high silver ashtrays on stands with the merry-go-round thing on the top, that when you press it down, the ash swirls away and it makes that funny noise. It reminds you of British Rail. I don't know. Thrilling, but probably the waiting was kind of training for the job. Let's face it, nothing happens around here for months until some duke boots the door down and drags in a couple more crates of stuff he's lifted off the ragheads. "Hey lads, got a job lot of rubble here if you want it. Wife won't have it in the house." There was a video playing behind some office dividing screens in one corner of the room, round by some false pillars, false stolen or whatever. Some homeless job seekers were kind of huddled round the TV for warmth, rubbing their hands in such close proximity to a job. I sat down on the floor because no one else was, and pretended not to watch the video. It was one of those productions you used to see in primary school, made by the deliberately stultifying video corporation. Videos that made your bum cold from sitting on non-parquet flooring. Videos you couldn't hear properly because sound hadn't been invented in the 70s. Videos that drained from your memory like very fine sand draining through something with huge holes in it. Slow pans, no pots. Voiceover from some slightly recognisable was-on-TV actor creature. Prim, self-satisfactory British deadpan history makeover subject. Fuzzy Wuzzies were naughty, not really Christians or people, sorted them out, now they have a proper IMF debt and AIDS, lucky them. And we nabbed all their good stuff, by the way. The Tramp Collective gazed into this fantasy world of lies and misbelief we called television, as if they were unaware that they themselves were pretty high on the list of its victims. They were unaware, really, I suppose, mainly because TV hadn't told them anything about it yet. This was too near a conclusion for me. I pulled out a book, my symbol of "I'm not with you" lot. I wasn't really with the book either, because I'd grown so used to reading books which I had no idea what they were about. It had become completely normal for me to read pages and pages without understanding anything. This is usually called studying philosophy. Occasionally something surfaces from the depths, but then a parenthesis or something grammatical would swim by and drown any drop of comprehension in a deluge of metaphor, simile, whatever. I looked at my watch, fished it out of a pocket. Don't like watch straps. I didn't want this stupid job, didn't want to speak to any of these grunts because they might be better than I thought they were. I didn't want to make friends with the place or the people because that was the road to death. Working was a straight line to nothing. The hours were a millstone around your neck. The money was shit without overtime all the time. And then it was still shit, and you had even less free time than before. Nothing was happening. The video droned on about civilizing people, using bombs, Bibles and bacteria. Nobody was getting called for the interview. I thought I'd give it 40 minutes and piss off. I still had to go to Whitechapel and fail to get another job I didn't want, and then go back to the flat and get down to wasting some serious time at home. I went through one of those periods where you stare at a book and turn the pages, but don't see a word or remember where you began or finished next time you pick it up. You go back a bit and start again, but reach the same point with the same feeling again. I should have watched the Nazi Antiques Roadshow. I don't know why I didn't leave then. I'd really done enough, really. I'd come here in all honesty, filled in the form, confessed my health sins, compromised every sort of intention I ever had. I'd been waiting for hours with a bunch of zoo scrapers and quarter-wits in a disused boiler room in the Empire's junk shop, watching propaganda for the intellect free. This was asking for too much. I looked around the room for help. Bad move. Talk about asking for too much. My co-non-workers, the scum de la scum, they scratched, they shifted in their coats, which looked suspiciously like charitable gifts from dead people's relatives. They murmured like the lonely wind moans among the fallen crosses in a forgotten war cemetery. Woo! One of them looked like Crosby, Stills, Nash or the other one, only in slightly better clothes. I was getting spooked. Adjectives were tumbling around my head. Hemingway would kill me if he caught me thinking like this. I had to do something declarative, but I wasn't sure it wasn't something to do with smuggling, so I was stuck. The warders walked around all macho and self-important as if they owned the place and not the other way around. Masculine objects of no discernible purpose, striding around with other masculine objects of no discernible purpose hanging from their belts, keys, dog clips and bits of metal. They held their arms slightly away from the sides so as to avoid knocking their hands against such a lethal array of authority. Like museum gunslingers ready to pull out a ring of deadly chubs at the slightest sign of anyone continental trying to touch what isn't rightfully theirs anymore. These fuckwits were all ex-mob filth or traffic warden rejects. The only job left they could get with a uniform and keys on your belt. Below them gaped the abyss of night watchmen. Epaulets, shiny shoes, work clothes for shit for brains. They even had a little blue peaked cap each to pull over their eyes to be all threatening, or to set back at a jaunty angle if they were feeling rakish that day. They prowl around other people's property looted by their own government, the same government that employs them at basic rates to propagate the system that has reduced them to being guardians of stolen goods visited by the previous owners on their holidays. And somehow they managed to keep the self-respect in the middle of all this. And I was asking them if I could give up my being and join them. Ha! I looked at a bunch of these men standing by the door where I came in. Stomachs stretched to blue shirts, trousers sagged beneath the Delta Farce hardware, white socks peeked cheekily from between black cuffs and shoes. Everything in me screamed, yes, I'd rather die. I will anyway. It was getting towards 3 o'clock, and enjoyable as it had been, I really had a nothingness to get back to. Really, guys, it's been great, but sometimes the world is more than enough. But I didn't have the courage just to get up and walk out past them after filling in the form and listening to the guy's judo speech and everything. So I'm at the point of sticking around for maybe another 15 minutes and then I'm really leaving when all the lights go out. I couldn't read my book, but at least the Aryan Collector's promo video had gone off as well. A moment's silence, and then some shuffling and a bit of giggling from the cheap seats, and then a warder speaks up. This was the moment all his training had been for, a moment he'd been preparing for through all those heartbreaking days of giving directions to Americans, all those crusty hours of staring at big stones from deserts, those eons of restlessness in Abyssinia Room 27. He had honed his skills secretly in readiness for this day, like an apprentice knackerman stropping the blade of his killing knife each night in bed. He was like a coiled spring, all bendy and supple, the slinky of interview room no-lights emergency situations. Lives hung on his decisions. The fate of dozens of unemployed Englishmen everywhere were in his hands. Those hands forged in the purifying fire of his calling. Hands that held within them the very history of stealing old stuff from foreigners. Hands that could squeeze the life out of a helpless teabag or point the way to any amount of 5th century gravel. Breathless, we waited upon his words. What happened next would decide if the lights went on again or not. He used big authority words like rectify and situation. Okay, just situation. He told us not to walk around in the dark because they needed the cases for a shipment of dust from Iraq or something, and he didn't want us breaking them. He asked us, forever mindful of the men under his protection, if anyone was feeling a bit, uneasy. Some cockney cunt who'd seen In Which We Breed too many times said something about he should have brought his candles. It was the old Blitz spirit come back to life, I was thinking, a tear forming in me mince pie. The warder, quick as a walnut whip, said, yeah, they were bringing some candles in a minute. Snuffed out that brief encounter with levity. Sense of humour to be left at the door when he had got this job, obviously. Some of the uniforms started fucking around behind the exit door looking for self-immolating Muslim terrorist cells or something. The applicants from for hell just sat there, not doing anything, because they didn't have the right clothes to fuck around in a place of work yet. I thought I'd take the opportunity and not the job, now that they weren't the same thing, and got up and walked out past some fat bloke with a walkie-talkie, who didn't look like he was any good at either of them. Walking and talking, I mean. I wandered off past endless stretches of crap even the Egyptians didn't want back, rows of chunks of rocks which even the gods they celebrated had abandoned, past lines of other people I wish the stones had fallen on, and found the exit. Outside, I breathed in the 20th century again. I breathed it in. I breathed in and I breathed out. I walked off and came across Holborn Tube, completely by accident.